Safety first.
Safety first, yeah. Welcome back to JB Reviews. I have the one and only Josh from Truck Stuff. You gotta go and subscribe to his channel. So a lot of people do not like the idea of this Hurricane because it's not a 5.7 V8.
Yeah, you know, the standard opinion has always been, I want my truck to have a V8 engine in it. Only the V8s can do the work,
Yeah. Well, let's see what it sounds like. You think it's gonna sound good?
I think it's gonna sound really good.
All right, let's see. I'm gonna ask you some hard questions here, so we can't let them know what you work at, okay? All right, here we go. Oh, let's put in all-wheel drive. See, you have four-wheel drive auto. Let's do it.
Holy moly.
Gosh, it's fast.
That will set you back in your seat.
It's fast. Now, here's one benefit. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay.
Naturally aspirated engines are affected by this elevation. We're like 43.
Elevation and temperature.
Yeah, there you go. Elevation.
I believe we're 4,800 feet.
Oh, 4,800 feet?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, this doesn't have the off-road pages, but it would tell us. But yeah, so you said temperature too?
Yeah, temperature too. So the colder the air charge going into the engine, the higher the oxygen density is.
Oh, okay.
So that's naturally aspirated.
Got you.
You know, if you go back to the racing days and the old Victor Jr. intake manifolds where they had this big empty block underneath where the carburetors would be. That was specifically designed to fit a block of dry ice. So it would lower the temperature of the incoming air temperature, thus increasing the oxygen density. Now, if you have more oxygen molecules in a confined space, you have to maintain your air-fuel ratio for performance. More oxygen means you can add more fuel.
So instead of dry ice, we have turbos now, right?
So turbos, where your charge air temperature is actually controlled through the charge air cooler. Now you're artificially creating your own atmosphere with the turbos, with boost. And even though temperature does play a big part in that, it's still pretty regulated. So on a turbo engine, colder temperatures outside, yes, you're going to see some oxygen molecule density increase, thus being able to increase the amount of fuel to maintain the correct aspect ratio for your air-fuel mixture. But they're not as easily affected through elevation because, again, you're creating your own atmosphere in there. Now, we could get into the discussion of like nitrous oxide versus turbo or supercharger, where nitrous oxide, of course, doesn't care about elevation or temperature, so to say.
Sure.
And that's why they run better at higher elevations. Now, turbos still experience turbo lag at higher elevations because you're not able to add as much fuel because your air density is a little bit less. However, under normal operating conditions, passenger vehicles every day on and off the road, the turbo's creating its own atmosphere to a point where none of the other atmospheric conditions affect it as much.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm glad. Thank you for explaining it too, because that is a part of it that I've noticed out here. I'm from the East Coast, so when I got out here, I had a V8 6.6 liter LAT gas Chevy truck, and it was super slow. Now I've driven the trucks back east, and they were a lot quicker. But like you just said, the thinner air, the air density, there's just a lot of things that are going to affect a naturally aspirated engine. So that's the beauty of this new 3-liter Hurricane. Now, this is the standard output. It has a 0W20 oil. The high output has a 0W40. And that's something that I've talked about, and the one thing I'm really upset about with Stellantis and all the manufacturers, except for GM, just a little bit of GM, but they decided to just kind of go away from increasing the technology in the V8s. That's why they're so far behind. I think that when you consider this engine, it does have more technological upgrades for reliability, for strength. Like it's cross bolted and what's it called? Like it's cross and.
Oh, so we're talking about the block construction with the main caps. Yeah, you're cross bolted on the mains, so you have bolts coming in like this and bolts coming in like this.
Right.
And they're, you know, it's a very specific sequence in which we torque them down. but the final product of that is a much stronger connecting point for those caps. When you don't have the cross bolts, it's kind of like gosh, how do I explain it? The rear wheels on a dually truck versus a single rear wheel vehicle.
Okay.
When you're pulling a trailer and you're going down the road in a dually, you have a wider platform to sit you onto the road, and you're not as affected by lateral force. Okay. On an engine, when you have just two bolts coming up like this, you don't have a lot of support for lateral force. When you increase the connecting area of that main rod cap to the engine block, and then you also add bolts coming in from the side and from the bottom, your clamping force is increased, but you're also increasing your lateral force on that connecting rod cap, and it just gives it a more artificially simulated one-piece connection, as if it was machined that way without having to unbolt the cap.
Gotcha.
Like solid metal surfaces. I don't know if I explained that good enough for people.
No, that makes sense. I mean, well, you said dually. A lot of guys on my channel like trucks, so yeah, you have more stability on the road when you have a dually, and in terms of the strength of the engine, you have a stronger block that can take the beating of those turbos.
Oh yeah.
And that boost that's going to be built up, you know, with those turbos.
Oh yeah, you're talking on that high outputs with 26 pounds of boost.
26 pounds of boost. 540 horsepower.
You got that much power coming out of an engine that's half the size of, well, complete engine's not half the size, but the 3 liter versus a 5.7 or even a 6.4. The cubic inch displacement of the two, yeah, you're almost half the size of it. Everything else has to be built stronger in order to handle those kinds of pressures. I mean, the combustion pressures alone have to be pretty high. I mean, it's what, 10.6 to 1 compression?
Yeah, something like 10.4 to 1.
10.4 to 1.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, you had a small block Chevy with 10.4 to 1 compression, man. You were running premium gas and add an octane booster. Nowadays, you're running it off of pump gas, just, medium grade, and you're at 10.4 to 1 compression. So that gives credence again to the ability for technology to make these engines perform better and last longer and be stronger than what the older technology. I mean, we've been sitting on that 5.7 HEMI for a very long time.
Yeah. With little to no changes.
Right. I mean, they added MDS and VVT.
Oh my gosh.
Oh boy. Yeah. Other than that, they got rid of the EGR because they brought in the VVT.
Yeah. Well, variable valve timing is not too much because it pretty much that did help a little bit with fuel economy, right? Because it allowed RPMs to be able to. No, it didn't.
It helped with emissions. They were able to get rid of EGR because of the ability to have the VVT.
Got you.
So by varying the valve timing, you can decrease the amount of emissions when the engine isn't needed in full power mode.
Got you. Okay.
Right, and then of course MDS added to that by canceling out 4 cylinders.
Makes sense. Yeah, I see.
It doesn't really increase the power. It just decreases the power when it's not needed.
I see. No, that's, again, like I said, nothing wrong with these new engines. They're faster, they are more advanced, and they, as you guys heard, they're overbuilt. Now you got to go over to Truck Stuff. He's going to talk about this fake dipstick in the screen here on his channel. I won't steal his thunder there, but dude, thank you so much for this.
No problem.
I learned a lot today. Yeah. And that's why I have on my channel, because I learn a lot. I'm sure you guys do too. So yeah, be sure to check out his channel too. I'm not going to probably post one video anytime soon, but yeah, his will already be out. But if you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch this video, subscribe to his channel, and let's go ahead and talk about some of the construction that we didn't discuss just now. Now I want to show you guys with and without this engine cover. I don't know why, but they do bolt it down. You guys can probably see it right there. So I had Josh take that off for us, and here is without it. Now, as I discussed, this engine does have the main bearing cradles cross bolted for both engines. Also, the crankshafts are forged from twisted steel and are clasped by forged steel connecting rods. And as far as like the internals, they are using something called a plasma transfer wire arc, and basically, in short, it just adds wear resistant cylinder walls basically. And that's what I was saying earlier. They're basically using aerospace technology on this engine. And what would have happened if they continued to make the 5.7 V8 better, and even the 5.0 from Ford, or the 6.2 and 5.3 from Chevy? Like, what would have happened if they kept these engines, you know, more relevant? But over time, the V8s have kind of died out, and they haven't done anything to make them better over the course of time. That's why they're no longer here. But, you know, at the end of the day, you heard Josh, you know, having these extra turbos are going to give you better performance, especially in these higher elevations. If you plan on towing a trailer, the good news is you don't really need the 392 rear end like on this truck. This truck has a 392, it has a tow package. You don't really need that because you have so much horsepower and torque coming out of these engines. And apart from this engine not having a dipstick, it is kind of a fail, but is it though? I feel as though these engines have always had monitors for the oil level anyways. So even if you weren't checking the oil, the engine, or excuse me, the truck would tell you that the engine oil is low and you need to add some oil. So I think that there are some pros to these engines, but I do understand that people are going to take more time to see how well they are going to hold up, because that's the biggest issue that I see with these engines is, are they going to be reliable? And as we talked about with the direct injection in this engine, it is centrally located, and I'm talking about the sprayers for the fuel. The injectors are centrally located, so hopefully that means that they're going to spray the intake and the exhaust valves to keep those things clean. But I hope you guys liked the video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Check out Truck Stuff's channel as well. See you guys soon.